Okay,
We did it.
that's it.
We made it, guys.
We're live.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Take Two, a time where we look back and talk a little bit more about what I talked about on Sunday. Hey, Gil, are we online now? There we are. Good. Oh, I gotta turn this down. Okay, good. As you can see, I've got Brian with me tonight. And again, I love this time of conversation to get a little bit deeper into the nitty gritty things, because a lot of times there's things that might not be clear, and having the opportunity to talk about those things a little bit more for me, I love that. I love hearing input. So, again, if you have questions about what I said Sunday, or even as we're talking, you have a question about what we are talking about, write it down, share it with us, and we will try and get to those things, because we do want this to be advantageous for everyone who's listening. So, last Sunday, a quick just overview. I'm continuing to talk about the importance of our desires, where we detect what God is doing, that we call kairos moments. And then after we detect it, we dig into it. The first part of digging was repentance. Remember, repentance is now something I want us to look at as good news. Repentance, instead of it being a condemnation of you being bad and you need to get better, repentance is an invitation by God to see where He is, to see where we are, and to kind of build that gap. And this is a continuation of that digging into the kairos, trying to become more aware of it. And we're digging in with what I'm calling compassionate curiosity, right? And I mentioned 5 C's that are written up here. We start with compassion, connection, concreteness, curiosity, and all of them need to take place with courage, because this is something that requires courage for us to step into, I think, this deeper conversation. So that was kind of what I talked about on Sunday. And let me throw it to you, Brian. After, hearing it, questions, thoughts, hit me.
Hit me. I really liked the talk. I really enjoyed it, and I thought you did marvelous. Um, Sam felt like he wished he could split it up into 2 talks, and I can see why, because it was a lot. It was a lot
Yeah.
that you
A
covered.
lot of information.
Yeah, but it was also you touched on them enough to where I think there, at least to me, there wasn't any like blind spots. There was. I felt. I think what was really cool is the whole um, Jesus being inquisitive, and like the way that he answered questions with questions and was trying to meet people where they were. I would love to hear more about that and why you think that's important, that to be inquisitive in that sense, where you are, because I almost don't think partially some of those questions, it's a weird feeling, because it's like if you know something well enough, like if you ask me a question, the only reason I should be able to answer with a question is if I know the answer. And I think a lot of that, I think Jesus was doing some of that, and just like you said, making us self-aware by engaging us in the story. So I'm sure that's a lot of that was going on. But why do you think for us would be beneficial or advantageous, to use your giant word, to ask like questions like that when conversing?
I think you're right. There is, in Jesus' case, an awareness of what's happening in the hearts of people. And what he's trying to do is help them come to an understanding of what's happening in their heart.
Yeah.
Because unless we come to that understanding of where we already are, how can we change?
Right.
And so I think that's an important part. I think when we ask questions of people, we're not necessarily in that same place where, oh, I know the answer to this, and I'm just going to ask you the question to prove my answer. Right? That would be counter to what's happening with Jesus. It would be really to dive more into, what are you feeling? explain it to me. Let's put it on the table. Let's look at it together. Let's kind of dissect some of it so that we can understand it a little bit more, and that way we can really talk about it in a way that's helpful to you, and maybe that way will become a little bit more transformative. Now that I see where this is, what I'm doing. I mean, it's happened with me in counseling, where I'm talking to someone, counselor, and they start talking to me about something, and they ask me questions about whether it's my childhood or why I feel this way. And as I start explaining it, I start actually answering what's going on inside of
Yeah.
me as I dig a little bit deeper. And so I think that inquiry is so important to get to the heart of the matter, to get to the emotion, to get to the motives, and to understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening.
Yeah. And I think that's cool that you put them all together, especially having connection and compassion in there, because those two things for me are like where the relationship comes in, and the only reason,
Hmm.
or the one of the reasons why you might earn the right to speak into somebody's life or ask a question,
Yeah.
because asking somebody a question that you haven't been compassionate with or connected with, typically you're gonna get like a surface answer, or
Yeah.
yeah, why would you let somebody in, so I think that's like really important that you put that up there, and it wasn't just a sermon about just inquisitiveness.
Yeah, and the compassion needs to take place towards ourselves too,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we experience that kairos and we're aware of something, you're aware of doing something maybe in a selfish motive, and it becomes something, maybe it's that kind of mirror kairos where you see yourself and you think, oh man, that's me, and your first instinct is that's so bad,
Yeah.
right? And what happens when we don't start with compassion is we start to close the door on growth and the ability to go further,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, that's so bad. Okay, I just need to stop being bad. I need to see that that's bad. And then that's the end of really the growth part. It's just, yeah, do better, do better, do better, right?
Yeah.
Instead of what's going on,
Mm.
right? What's happening? I mean, today in my cohort, we were talking about the need to belong to people.
Yeah.
And so I was reading this chapter in my book about belonging and how we need to belong, and the things that there's a healthy way and an unhealthy way that we use that, sometimes the peer pressure, wanting to belong taints what we do. It was talking about Jesus, how they wanted to make him king, and he said no. He knew what was in man, and he didn't trust what was in
Right.
man. So he didn't go by their agenda. And I was reading this, and I had a lot of pushback. And in reading this, I just felt like, yeah, I don't do that. I don't do that, right? And this whole idea of belonging is just like, I just felt this pushback. And normally I would have just kind of gone with it, where, yeah, no, that's not me. That's not me. And then I just asked myself, why are you pushing back so much? And a thought came to mind, a memory of when um, I think I was just out of high school, and I had my first paid vacation ever. And so it's like, I'm getting paid for this week that I have off. So I'm going to do something. But no one else had a paid vacation. Everyone else was working or in school. And so I had to go do something by myself. And so I went camping at Angeles Forest. I took a tent, and I was going to be there for a week. I was going to do some soul searching. I lasted 2 days, and I had to get out of there. It was driving me crazy. And this awareness of that moment came back saying, you can't be alone.
Mm.
You remember that, how horrific an event. I just was like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And then there was just this awareness that what you think you don't need is something that shows up. And it just kind of confronted me with how I need it,
It's cool.
right? So if I just have this, nope, that's not me, or if oh, that's bad, just stop it, and I don't have compassion to enter into
Yeah.
the story usually stops instead of getting to the roots of it.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I could be witness to that. Like, I've been in conversations where people have done that to me, where they've like met me where I was.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what I needed was questions, like,
Yeah.
I think that there's like, it's typically there's like a power in the from the person answering the questions, but I think Jesus gives another perspective. Like there's a power shift from the person asking the questions. Like
Mm-hmm.
you become, and it's a humble power. It's a Jesus kind of power. It's like that. It's typical
Yeah.
Jesus. It's like that. Like I want to know you. Like you said, I want to know you better. Uh, I want you to know you better. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you the questions that I know are gonna reveal some things
Yeah.
that may bring up some wounds, that might bring up some situations, but that's the only way that I'll be able to empathize. That's the only way that we'll be able to connect. That's the way that compassion is going to be able to be seen.
Yeah.
So all of these things are like it's almost this like constant like dying so another like thing can
Mm.
live. Like you're like by asking the question, you're like you're killing the uh what do you call this, you're killing the well the ego, almost like you're
Yeah.
killing like the like
The certitude kind
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah, like
yeah.
you're like teaching like this could be both of us, like
Hmm.
it's like lending like a flag. Like I'm not here to teach you.
Yeah.
I'm here to listen. Here's a question. It's like kind of
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's such an important, nuance to that aspect because we do live, I think, in a culture where the person who answers is the person who is in the know,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
That's
And
that's where
here,
the power typically stands.
yeah, and here is Jesus doing the asking.
Yeah.
And that does reverse that kind of role
Yeah.
and puts it on a different, you know, playing field. And the people who are easiest to connect to are the people who do ask the questions, who want to know.
Yeah.
I remember years ago I read a book called Relational Intelligence, and it's kind of all about that, right? It's all about being a person who is inquisitive is usually a person you like talking to because they're trying to find out more about you, and most of us like to talk about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So you just start talking about that, and I would challenge myself and others, if you're in a conversation, what are you talking about, right? Because I catch myself doing this. I'm talking about myself, my day. Nothing wrong with those things. But if it's always you talking about yourself,
Right.
and there's never, how are you doing? Right? There's never the turn. It's kind of like, you talk to someone, hey, Joe, how's it going? Well, and they just start spewing all the horrors of their day and life to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, okay, okay. And it doesn't stop, right? It's like, oh man, now it's like you're grasping for air. It's like, give me a lifeline here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if it never reciprocates and saying, oh, sorry, man, I'm just in this mood. How are you, right? If it never goes there, you don't want to talk to Joe as much
Yeah.
because, Joe isn't interested in you.
Right.
Joe is
Right.
just interested in Joe.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's hard to connect with someone who's just interested in themselves.
There's this activity we did at that poetry workshop we filmed at my house the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like 4 boxes of like they had different types of happy faces, and they all represented a type of responder that you are. Like what like and one of them was like if you're a responder, like when somebody gives you good news, you immediately give your good news. Or like and that's like a weird face. And then there's like another one that didn't have a mouth, and it was like when somebody gives you their news, do you automatically like talk about how it's turn the table to you? And then there was like a healthy one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share it with you later, but I think there's like yeah, you're right, there's like a ton of nuance to this because it's like you could be the question asker, you could be the answer, and I think Jesus could have been both. But like you said, the 307 questions he asked to the whatever
Mm-hmm.
he answered, the three or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, there's his intention, like was to teach and learn, and I think you could be both. You could be the question asker, and it depends where your motive is, and
Yeah.
watching how you respond, and why you respond a certain way, and are you that overpower just answering to cover, just to be able to speak? Are you listening just to speak? And I think there's so much in that. Like, how could you be empathetic if you're already thinking about what you're going to say about yourself? Like,
Yeah.
it'd be impossible,
Right.
understandably.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is to connect, and that's that whole like the video that we showed, about the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just so well done in helping us to see that what happens with connection is there is a vulnerability because we're willing to tap into the things that we feel, right? And the emotions that we have that are similar to the ones that a person is going through and saying, oh, yeah, here's where I am too. I feel sorrow. I feel pain. I feel hurt, someone sharing today just a struggle that they're going through in their church and not feeling like they can stay there anymore. And, but this is where their home is. My heart just started feeling all those things that I've gone through that remember that. And just again, understanding that's empathy. I can feel what you're feeling. Now, the question is, do I want to expose that I feel that? Or do I want to come across as strong? Like, well, hey, listen, man, this is what you need to do. This is it. Instead of just like, that hurt. I know that hurt.
I want to talk about that a little bit. Talk about what good exposing looks like, because
Yeah.
I think what unhealthy exposing looks like could be that same thing we're talking about with the responses. It's like, oh, bro, the same thing. I know exactly what you're feeling. I know there's that unhealthy empathy that you dealt with
Yeah.
before. Like, everybody's felt that guy that's like, no, I don't think it's exactly the same. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, like I don't. You
Yeah.
didn't, like, especially the severe stuff, like someone
Yeah.
loses a child or somebody
Yeah.
is
And you
raped or
said,
something. You're
yeah,
like,
yeah, my guppy died when I was 3.
right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I lost a hamster. You're like, bro, it's not this. It's like those.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, the empathy is just tapping into yourself so that you can have an understanding, but it's still making room for them to have the freedom of expression,
Yeah.
right? You're not silencing their voice. You're allowing it to have resonance in you, and I think that's the difference between healthy and unhealthy. Unhealthy stops the voice from being able to come out and express, because that's part of that idea of confession being good for the soul, right? It's this revealing of those things, being able to lift those things up, and it won't happen if you interrupt it, and say, oh yeah, me too, I know what you're going through. It's one thing to say, I feel for you right now. I feel, or even like in the video, I don't even know what you're going through, right? But I feel for you, right? And just having that kind of compassionate stepping into identification with, instead of that idea of sympathy is like, oh man, that's bad. And then but at least it's not, at least at least you have feelings, right? I mean, it's kind of,
Yeah.
we then take away its meaning by trying to make them feel better, right?
All right.
Because that sometimes sympathy is done with the best motives. I've done it. I do it to myself. You're going through something. Well, at least I'm not like they are in this country suffering with this things. At least I have a job. At least I have, right? And I'm just trying to numb the emotions that I have instead of digging into them and trying to understand them.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, for me, that was one of the important lessons learned in this. That sympathy, even for myself, just trying to say, hey, you've got it pretty good. Be thankful. I'm not trying to stop gratitude, but I'm trying to understand the reasons I'm feeling that way.
All right.
The reasons the hurt is there, the reasons the loneliness is there, the depression is there. And especially at a time like this, I know, man, it's still just hovering over us, even though things are starting to open up. And I hope they continue. I just have this feeling the storm's coming, right? But even as it's starting to open up, there's still this like gun shy kind of thing. There's still this, you know, shock of what's happened. I'm still a little thunderstruck of what just has happened over the last year, and I'm definitely not over it.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people are.
No.
And so have a little compassion on what you're feeling. Have a little trying to understand and connect to what you're feeling so that it can have that positive, repentive work in our lives.
One thing that you kind of ran through that I wish maybe you would have did, you kind of touched on it right now as well, was like when you said that people eat or they watch pornography or they have these
Mm-hmm.
habits that they use to cover up
Mm-hmm.
maybe how they're feeling rather than like finding the kairos in that or like
Yeah.
where God resides in that. And I know we talked about it before, kind of um, allowing yourself to reveal what need that thing is meeting,
Yeah.
and then asking God to show you how to uh, fill it with other things that
Yeah.
that could lead you to Him. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's an important part of this digging is to not shame yourself to a place where you silence yourself. Um, and those were the things I used, whether it was the overeating, the pornography, just this. I want to, um,
shop and stuff.
yeah, the excessive shopping. These are all things I do, but I don't want to admit to them because they're just not the best light I want to be seen in. And so what we tend to do is just pretend they don't exist. We bury them. We don't talk about them. And I think, of course, if we're going to talk about some of these things, you want to have someone safe you can talk to, someone who's not going to condemn you, um, whether it's a counselor, a spouse, close friend, someone you trust who, if I share these deep things, whether it's those or others, I'm not going to get judged
Right.
or they're not going to go and tell everybody about it, right? And it's going to be something that causes more pain. Um, but if I don't go to that place of trying to communicate with what's happening, then what's happening will never have the ability to have a benefit to me,
Right.
right? And that was kind of the idea of the good news of these moments, right? To see them as something beautiful can happen here. Even though this might be a terrible thing, a destructive thing, something beautiful can happen when we see that the reason we are doing this is connected to something else, and we're able to find that and address that and find healing at that. There's a deep level of healing that's taking place,
Yeah. Yeah.
that would not take place unless there was the reckoning of these things, acknowledging them, and digging into them.
And it reminds me of like as you were talking, it reminds me of any of those like shows where they redo the house for the people and like
Mm-hmm.
what do you call it, makeover
Yeah.
house shows. There's that moment where the couple kind of realizes what's going to happen, like they're going to
Yeah.
destroy the house they live in,
Yeah.
and then they're going to get this brand new house that they trust these people to do it.
Yeah.
But there was that moment where they're like, I really like this wall, I really like this paint that I painted with my mom, and now it's but
Yeah.
this is there's this like moment where you're like, but there's a like a thank you to the thing, like thank you
Mm-hmm.
for filling that void, that I mean there's
Yeah.
some beauty in that moment where you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, this place is trash, this is not the best place for me,
Yeah.
but thank you for covering me with for that moment, whatever, and then moving, like
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but it's really easy for I think for someone to like hear that and be like, there goes Sam, always trying to, try to turn every bad thing into something that might be good, But I think there is like, if you really, and it makes it makes the relationship with that thing more human, like, yeah,
Yeah. Gosh, that's the word, right? Human.
yeah,
It makes it real. It makes it something that is part of who you are, and you can't move without dealing with who you are.
yeah, yeah,
Right? It's the only way you can move forward, and sometimes the unwillingness to say, well, you know what? I get a lot of comfort from shopping on Amazon and buying that,
Yeah.
or having that glass of wine or whiskey, or going to that website. I find it does something for me to ease the stress I'm feeling, ease the hurt I'm going through, to deal. If I don't at least acknowledge the good it's apparently doing for me, or the value I'm getting from it, then we end up kind of lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we, if you're lying to yourself, you're going to eventually say you were lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And so
That's pretty crazy that you
yeah,
could do
you'll
that.
kind of continue in that vein. Gosh, and we do it in so many ways, especially in this church culture, where we just want to label things bad, and therefore just don't think them, don't do them, and it causes more harm than good, because we end up stuffing these things down and never addressing them.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
gosh, yeah, I've been listening to a few things just talking about that. It'll be a whole detour if we go that direction.
Did you listen to by the fundamentalist one on the conflict?
No, I haven't listened to that one
He just a little side note. Simon and I listened to this podcast, but there's one of the guys was talking about this thing called like purity culture. Peter Rollins was talking about
yet.
purity culture, and how we have this desire to make everything really like clean,
Yeah.
like very like kind of what we're talking about has happened in the church
Yeah.
for the longest. Like, don't mention it. Let's just make everything
Yeah.
really clean, and that's the aesthetic. And he was saying something really interesting, like that social media and these like maybe dating websites and stuff like this, they cater to this kind of thinking, because they're like, all right, we're going to only tag you in people that think exactly like you, things that you're into. And what that's going to do is wash out everything else that you're not a part of, so that you don't see as right, that you don't see as conflict with your thoughts. So now you have nothing. You won't have to wrestle with anybody else. You won't have to
Yeah.
you
Deal with
You won't have to
anything.
deal with date somebody that's not. I'll just X out all the people that you shouldn't be dating. We'll just match you with the perfect match, and that's what they're trying to sell, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, wouldn't it be cool if they made a club that instead of matching you with, like, I guess they have these clubs where you can, if you think about like anything that's exclusive, right? It's they're trying to market to a certain group.
Yeah.
But if there was a club that was like intentionally putting you with people that they knew you weren't going to get along with.
Because really what they're saying is,
Yeah.
we're going to do all that we can so that you don't have to grow.
Right.
I mean, because that I'll jump into here, because that really is the same thread that I was going to
Yeah.
go into, where it was talking about how that purity culture and what they've done to try and say, oh, you can't even look at a woman, you can't, if these things are happening, you just got to bounce your eyes. And what they've done by this mentality of saying, oh, it's bad, just stop it, is they've objectified women, even though they haven't said it out loud, right? They said, well, women are just objects, so you can't look at them because they're just objects. Instead of looking at them as human beings and respecting them as people, you're objectifying them, and then you're dealing with them as an object, and this is how you deal with that object. Right? Which doesn't allow growth. It doesn't allow healthy relationships. It doesn't allow you to deal with conflict and then communicate. And so we've got a whole group of Christians who don't know how to talk to the opposite sex because they've seen it as a threat. Right? And it's like, oh no, I can't talk to her because I've been told all I want to do is have sex with her. And so now I've never dealt with it, and that's all I see and hear in my mind. And so now I become a little bit just, innocuous to that whole thing. And I don't know how to deal with it. Instead of, you know what? You're going to have thoughts like that, but how do you get past them and see that person not as an object, but as a person? How do you show respect in spite of the things you see, in spite of the things you feel? How do you conduct yourself to a human being that is a part of this world that you live in and a part of the emotions that you have, right? And instead of going there and actually developing healthy things, we've just tried to stop it. Right. And that's, again, I think this goes into that concreteness, right? We're starting to name things, instead of just, oh, well, there's just this blanket of, oh, well, that's bad. Oh, yeah, I lost my temper. What happened? Oh, I just, got carried away. No, tell me the nitty gritty of it. What really happened? Well, my wife said this. I got upset and I threw and smashed, something on the floor. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about that, right? Because now it's like, now I'm dealing with it,
Yeah.
right? Without the concreteness, without talking about, well, this is what it is actually happening. Oh yeah, I just, overspent. Well, what did you buy? Now I got to tell you what I
Yeah.
bought,
Well, now you got to really know me. Now you
Yeah,
already got to
okay.
see inside of my,
Yeah,
my,
I bought my 25th pair of shoes. You know what I mean? It's like, now,
right.
why did you choose those shoes? What's going on? I mean, what do you get from buying another pair of shoes or whatever? The concreteness forces you to look at it a little bit more closely, deal with it more authentically. It makes the reality of what's happening more present, so that you can actually deal with it.
Yeah.
You know?
And the more you do that, the more you will gain discernment of how to do it responsibly, because there's
Yeah.
unhealthy and healthy in all of this, like
Yeah.
you can get so good at empathizing that you become manipulative, or you
Yeah.
become like for the wrong, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, being there for people is vulnerable, and if you're in the wrong mindset or aren't looking for the kairos moments, um, you will be looking for your own satisfaction moments in that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's another world of unhealthy and another thing that someone's got to deal with you with. So it's like
Yeah.
just finding healthy in how you interact with anything. I think is a good start.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, I kind of said it a lot during the talk. It was one of the things I think I repeated too much, but it just, unless we're really known, we can't really grow.
Yeah.
Unless we really, the real us shows up with what's happening, how can God really deal with us? Um, and I mean, it makes so much sense to me, and I think to everyone will say, yo, obviously, but I'm so aware of how I haven't done that so many times.
Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's a necessary reminder, but yeah, I feel like I've been really aware of it, and I feel like I've been through these conversations we've been having. I've been like trying to step into the conflict a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
where I would shy typically, or like, and again, there's an unhealthy side to that because then you get so conflictually driven that you want to like, no, no, we're gonna deal with it right now. We're gonna, and I, but there's like a balance to everything, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask everybody questions. I'm just gonna like, Sam said, ask questions. We could turn anything into religion, like, and there's like a balance to it all. I
Oh
think that's
no,
why those
here
three
comes
questions that
Brian.
Jesus had to like answer three questions because he knew if he didn't, we'll be like, Jesus never answered a question straight. So we should never, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that I think that's where the balance comes in. He had to show us like it's
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's true. I mean, we can go overboard. And again, everything that we're talking about is happening in grace and truth,
right,
right? It has to do with this journey and this goodness, and the reality is God sees us and sees himself. Because if it's not in that place, it's not safe, right?
right,
I don't want to get concrete with someone who I don't feel safe with.
right,
And the only way I can get concrete with somebody is have that environment of trust and connection. Otherwise, it's too vulnerable,
right,
right? But vulnerable is what we need,
yeah,
you know. And it's unfortunate that the church has become such a place where being vulnerable is not a virtue, and it's hidden. I mean, I know so many, you know, Christians who do things that, again, I don't have a problem with it. Like, say, even drinking, I know Christians who drink, but the church they go to, they can't tell the pastor or the people there that they drink, right? Because it will be, you know, rebuked. It will be shamed. I know people, you know, who do things like they go to Vegas or something like that for a weekend, and oh, I can't tell, you know,
Anybody.
yeah, anybody about that. I remember one of the, you know, pastors at a large church I went to go see Paul McCartney in concert with, and the guy who got the tickets for us worked for Niederlander, and he was able to get us into the Forum Club because it was back then, and got us a limo. And so, you know, we pull up in a limo to the Forum Club, and we get out, and it's just like we're having a great time.
Yeah.
And this pastor sees someone from his church and flips out because he has to justify what's going on
Wow.
instead of just saying, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, we got this limo. It's fun." Because his whole presentation was anti this, and here he's
Correct.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
And how awful it is to have to play that part.
Right. And I mean, one like I think perfect example, which is I think um like I my interaction with Eileen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and if you're watching Eileen, I'm grateful for you. And she was willing to meet up with me, to have a conversation, and I was willing to meet up with her, and
Yeah.
we wanted to deal with our understanding or misunderstanding of a situation, and came to a conclusion where both of us understood each other more deeply, and it couldn't
Yeah.
have happened unless we were willing, you know.
Yeah.
And and I was grateful for that moment because there's not a lot of people who aren't in my like immediate circle who would just want to like meet up with me to like tell me how they felt about something they felt I was doing wrong, you know.
Yeah.
And so that was, you know, there's obviously lets me know there's some conviction going on, but through those conversations she was even able to say like, you know, I'm able to see something different now because you brought something to light that I needed to see, you know. So thank you. And she thanked me, and I thanked her. And you know, we're not you know hanging out every single day,
Yeah.
but that there was a compassion that happened that I took something from and still learning from. And I miss you, Eileen, and I hope to see you soon, and I hope the church opens back up. But that's why it's valuable, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where respect develops, right? You
Right.
you respect someone because they're able to communicate with you and able to hear you,
Right.
right? It wasn't, you know, Eileen just didn't come out to you and tell you you're doing this wrong.
Nope.
She talked to you and listened to you, and you guys were able to have that dialogue and conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now you have a deeper understanding for one another, which gives you the ability to have a more dynamic relationship, right? Which
And
is,
you know, and who would have thought you could
yeah.
just not just yell at each other and just or talk behind each other's back and that'll fix everything. That's just not how it works. You know?
Yeah,
So it's like,
gosh, and those are the things that happen. I mean, the people who slander people, you know, in the church, it just happens so often. I know that there's times where I've been involved with church leaders and stuff, and I'm just sitting in this room and I'm just thinking, man, any other room, this would just be considered really gossip and trash talking. But for some reason, it's not here because everyone's, you know, big, you know, and it's interesting how the rules change, you know, in certain levels. And this is where Jesus really lays the hammer down, you know, on the people who are, you want to be great, you better be a servant. You know, this isn't how you know, you see these people who lord over you. That's not the way it works here. And so all this, I think, cuts to all these things. It cuts through this idea because it cuts through with compassionate curiosity, right? And we get to the nitty gritty, but we do it with love and concern, not behind the back, not blasting someone, not seeing ourselves as other than them, but seeing ourselves with them.
yeah,
The empathy, all these things are important. Um, you know, that, even what you mentioned, what happened with you and Eileen having a conversation, um, there's something sacred happening there.
yeah, I believe it.
It's a sacred space when you're able to have that kind of conversation about things that are troubling.
Yeah,
And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to dig into that,
Yeah.
right? And make sacred spaces happen.
Yeah.
How beautiful would it be if that was what the church was known for? The place where we can talk and find grace and explore truth and grow.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Why couldn't the church be that? Shouldn't the church be that? You know?
Yeah.
And it's sad because when you hear people say something like for example, they talk about the open mic we used to run, like, oh, that's what I feel like church should be, or that's
Mm-hmm.
where I found God, or not saying that God should be excluded, but shouldn't be people. What happened to people finding God at church and like going to church and knowing that they would go to meet people that would want to be
Yeah.
after that, and it's so sad that there has been like a shift, and it's strange, you know.
Yeah. I mean, talking with someone recently, they were talking about someone they knew. And they told them what I think church should be is people getting together and talking,
Mm.
right? And I definitely think it should be that. I think it should include that. Doesn't mean that's all it is,
All right.
but that's what I would like to see it include. I mean, and that's was the idea of this, take two, was to develop this to have that kind of dialogue. So it's not
Right.
just me telling people what to do, it's us talking about things. Yeah, I'm throwing a topic out, a conversation out, a scripture out, and then we digest it and we wrestle with it
Yeah.
and we argue about it and we share my thoughts, your thoughts about it. I remember Alex Ortiz brought a friend to church, Alex and his friend, this girl he was dating at the time. And he brought her to church, and it was on midweek. And I was saying, does anyone have any thoughts or questions? I opened it up, and they were just like, what? He's the pastor. Why is he asking someone else for a question? And it was troubling to her that I would want other people's input. And it just, that was the mindset that she's coming from, that the pastor is supposed to just tell us what's happening, not ask us,
All right.
right? And how terrible, right? How
Yeah.
how dangerous.
And unfortunate that that's what we're okay with, you know, as the congregation. It should be, um we should, I mean, the most valuable relationship I had with a pastor is, you know, with you, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been in church my whole life. And one other relationship I could even kind of think, you know, was this priest growing up, and he would have dinner every once in a while, and he knew our birthdays and stuff. But even that was like, that was not relational. We still treated him like he was something that I don't think he was, you know, which
Yeah.
is like this, you know, like big
Yeah.
old thing, you know. And we're like,
Yeah.
you're not the president of anything. You and made it clear that's how he wanted to be treated and how he felt comfortable being treated, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there's the Catholic, the whole
Yeah, and it just
priesthood.
depends. I mean, I know
Yeah.
some priests that are just like the most humble people in the world.
Yeah.
They're not asking you to call them father or anything. And then I know pastors who, specifically say you need to call me pastor, and it's like, okay, the title starts to mean something to them instead of it just being something they own, a responsibility. Um, but then again, you start just putting how do you open up to someone who is putting up this kind of level of
Yeah.
thing? It's hard to, now I've got to reach you and you're not going to ever be vulnerable to me,
Right.
kind of things. I mean, I don't know of, gosh, I'm sure it's happened, but I can't recall a pastor opening up and being vulnerable to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe once. But it was, yeah, very strenuous circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, I guess my brother, he doesn't count. He's my brother. We know too much about each other. So,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that there's that lack of humanity.
It's true. And it's weird that I even maybe considered not coming here for a long time because I felt like I knew you too well, and that was like a thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that, like, I don't know if it's wise that I, go to Sam's church because I think Sam and I are too good of friends now or something like that. And you're
Yeah.
like, wait, what that doesn't make sense, you know? Like, why would I want to be estranged from the pastor at all? And why would I?
Yeah.
But then there's like you want that separation, but you're like, then there goes accountability, there goes ability for compassion and connection,
Yeah.
So it's like it makes sense that all these things are connected because if I didn't have that with you, then you would just be another person that um, saw the Instagram filter of my life and
Mm.
been like, how could you ever empathize with anything I was going through because I wouldn't let you see that part.
Yeah.
So I think it's valuable that we get to see those things.
And I think that taps into that idea of courage, right? Where we have to be willing to step into those things, right? To deal with that. Because, right, you have something to lose. Well, if I go to Sam's church, right, which is not my church, but I know what you mean. If I go to Genesis, right, then I might lose the dynamic that we have. Because what if I started pulling the pastor card on you, you know?
Yeah, and that could have happened. And I
What,
would,
whatever that card looks like. Here's my pastor
Yeah,
card,
okay,
you know.
yo.
Kiss the ring. You know, playing it safe doesn't allow the relationship to grow deeper and doesn't allow our lives to grow deeper. And that's why courage is needed in all these areas, right? It takes courage to really have compassion towards someone and
Oh,
towards
for sure.
yourself.
Yeah.
It takes courage to be empathetic, to open yourself up. It takes courage to go to the nitty gritty details of all these things. It takes courage to want to investigate more
Yeah.
what's happening. Um,
Oh yeah.
and again, that Brene Brown definition, courage is telling the story of who you are with your whole heart, right? I love that because that's what we want, right? We want to be known. We want to grow. And I said this during my talk. I mean, what's the point of all this? If it's not to be transformed, what am I doing here? Why do I want to come to church if I'm not going to be changed? You know, what's behind it, right? I mean, yeah, it's great having friends. It's great interacting, but I could do that anywhere, right? I don't have to, I could go to a bar and get that. I could, and that's why people do, you know, because there's connection there.
Right.
They have those things there. But I don't want to just have friends. I want to be changed. I want to grow. I want to change the world. I always kind of like, hey, let's change the world. We all have these grandiose ideas like, let's do something because that's within us. That's something that we want to do. We want to step into that arena. I don't want to just, be friends with people. I don't want to just, be a nice guy. I want to be changed. I want to see change. Right. I want to be the agent of change, in all these areas. So it's important to be able to kind of step into those things.
That's good.
I ended kind of with this Karl Marx quote that, religion is the opiate of masses. And we've kind of prophetically made that true when we don't really deal with our stuff.
Did he give you anybody give you any Karl Marx comments?
No, I don't got any. You use Karl Marx in church? How dare you? Yeah, no, I just think that there is an element of truth in that is ironic, that we have made, maybe not in the same way that he had meant it, but it's what happens when we put on the facade and we pretend.
Right. And the religion part being the thing that we put before God, because I think when anytime I've ever said I don't consider myself religious or I hate religion or these kind of comments that I come up occasionally every day, it's someone says, well, explain yourself, and I go, in the same sense that Jesus was confronting Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes, I see that now, and that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying religion. And it could be, and that's the grander scale. I think we can be religious in in any sense that we've and me and Jordan talked about this. It's not that we're elevating these things to God level. I think we didn't put God in its place, so these things don't have a place. You know, there's
Yeah.
like a weird backwards thing there where we're like, I don't think these, because when I do talk to people about religion and idols, they don't say, no, I don't think they're gods. They're not possessing me or anything like that. And I go, well, then God's in its wrong place. Then God hasn't found the place where, at its highest place
Yeah.
of your life yet,
Yeah.
or your highest understanding. It's sitting down there with the thing that you are when they say like, show me your phone, show me your bank, and I'll show you your God kind of thing. And I think it's you put it down, you put God down there with the understanding of those things. So
Yeah.
still God's still serving you, and you're not serving God yet. So it's like these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that being a follower of Christ is a rigorous commitment to reality, right? It's I'm going to find the real above everything else,
Yeah.
right? And that's where God is, in the real, because the pretend, the facade, all the other things we use to cover sometimes or hide from the real.
Yeah.
And so that idea, and so that's why, how we convey ourselves and the words we use matter. When someone asks me if I'm a Christian, I immediately think, what do you think that is, right? Is that Westboro Baptist Church? Is that, what is in your wheelhouse when that word is being put out? Because I don't want to step into that necessarily.
Right.
But I want you to know how important Christ is to me and what that represents to me and how that's changing me and how I believe that is meant to change all of us in a way that's good for the world, right? For people who grew up in, communist countries who, learned, about Marx or whatever, when people think, well, Christians, and America just go hand in hand. And like, what
Right,
about
right.
Christians in China?
Yeah.
What about Christians in Syria? What about Christians in Haiti? What about, they have a different government. They have a different mindset. Let's not put God in those boxes.
Right.
And let's be real about the box we're in, because we all live with those different kind of glasses that see the world from our
Yeah.
reality. And so this
Sure.
is kind of take off the glasses, get to the heart. It happens, in these ways, in this grace and truth area. We have to have compassion. We have to have connection. We have to have the concreteness. We have to have this curiosity, and we have to have the courage to go there together so that we can get to the heart of who we are, and that's where God is.
It's good.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, whoever else is out there, for being there.
Thank
I
you.
hope you guys enjoyed this. And again, we miss you and look forward to having times together. And we'll let you know when that happens. But in the meantime, stay safe, everybody. God bless you. We hope to see you Sunday morning here, YouTube Live at 10 a.m. Or you can join us here live. We are meeting outside. It's been great seeing some people. Unfortunately, there is no child care at this point. We will let you know when that changes as well. But God bless you guys. Love you. Missed you. Take
Bye,
care.
guys.